In the far reaches of space, the small moon Velt orbited the gas giant Mara. There, in the village, lived humble farmers. They lived happily until Admiral Noble attacked them. He wanted more from them than they could give. A woman named Cora and a man named Gunnar, and their allies ambushed Noble and finished him off. Or so they thought. Next, we see a medical lab on a spaceship. That is where Noble is trying to get healed. Only by taking him out of the chrysalis will it be clear whether the brain is damaged, and if so, how badly. A little more, and the Admiral comes to his senses. He orders General Cassius to head for the Velt because the Scargiver is there, and then we see the tired group of 6 riders, led by Cora and Gunnar, return to the village. A strange figure, an iron robot, watches them from the cliffs. The riders are greeted by farmers. They have prepared tables with food for them. Cora cheers them with the news of Noble's death and that their grain will stay in the village. But they are contradicted by a young boy. He is a soldier in Noble's army. Just recently, General Cassius contacted him and told him to have the grain ready in 5 days. The guy is playing a double game, so he immediately reported everything to Cora's squad. It's time to talk to the community. The farmers should harvest the grain in 3 days. Then the invaders won't be able to destroy them from orbit. The harvested grain will be both a shield and a bargaining tool for them. And that night, on the love bed, Gunnar asked Cora why Noble had declared her the most wanted criminal in the universe. She replied that she had been raised by the regent of the empire and that she was Princess Isa's bodyguard, a friend of the royal family and an honored warrior. It was at the lighting of the last warship. Instead of a king, this was the first royal act of the princess. I was loyal to my father, the regent. He said the princess must die. I thought my father would protect me, so I was ready to carry out his orders. When the royal family approached the ship, the regent and his men slaughtered them. I was the one who shot the princess, and moments later, my father ordered my arrest as a murderer of the royal family. I fought my way to the shuttle and left the ship. I've been wandering like an exile ever since. Morning came, and everyone in the village headed out into the fields to harvest the crops. On Noble's ship, General Cassius is summoned to the medical lab. Noble demands that he be disconnected from all tubes and allowed to command his ship. He shows a trick, and one of the medics disappears, and he is allowed to take command. And the farmers are still harvesting grain. The work doesn't stop even at night. The young soldier contacts General Cassius again and reports on current events. He reports that the villagers are harvesting grain to prepare for their arrival. After the conversation is over, Noble, who is standing next to the general, immediately realizes that the soldier has changed sides and that Cora is now in the village. All the grain has been gathered, and sacks of flour have been placed near the village huts so that they cannot be shot at from orbit without risking destroying the harvest. Cora's team begins teaching the villagers how to defend themselves and use weapons. The shuttle Cora flew in is still on the move and will be very helpful in defense. In the middle of the night, General Titus of Cora's team asked everyone to confess and tell their stories so that everyone knows their brothers in arms. He started with himself. One day he refused to obey the regent's orders and the civilians were left alive. However, as punishment, the regent executed all of the general's men in front of him so that he would blame himself for their deaths for the rest of his life. Each member of the team tells a story about themselves, and all of their stories are very similar. Ships of the Empire come to their land, bringing destruction and enslavement. Each of them has miraculously escaped death, and now they are ready to take revenge with their last breath. In the morning, the shuttle is hidden behind a waterfall, and everyone is ready to meet the squad that will be sent to get the grain. Leaving the shuttle in a cave behind a waterfall, Cora meets the robot that has been following them all along. She knows him. His name is James. He was programmed to perform several tasks, but as fate would have it, those tasks have already been completed or failed. Now the robot wanders alone without a purpose for his existence. The enemy appears in the sky, but not a small detachment as expected, but the main Imperial ship Dreadnought. Noble and General Cassius can see from the instruments that all the houses in the village are protected by flour sacks. With the help of the thermal scope, they also noticed a large barn where all the weak population of the village had taken shelter: children, women, and old people. Noble's plan is simple: send a small force, not to fight, but to capture children and women. Putting a knife to their throats might make the rebels a little more cooperative. Ships approach the ground. All the villagers hide in their huts. Cora and Gunnar come out to meet the enemy squadron. Noble himself comes out to them from the nearest flagship. He meets his killer. Cora suggests that he stop the slaughter, spare the farmers, take the flour, and return to the ship. But Noble disagrees. He tells the girl that she has no power over him, that she is not in a position to dictate terms. Noble explains that he knows of a house where women, old people, and children are hidden. Now that his men are Approaching them, he sets his terms. He will spare everyone, take the flower, but the price is Cora. The father regent will welcome only her and no one else from her group. Cora agrees. She turns to the village and makes a sign of refusal. In the village itself, one of the farmers stands with a sledgehammer near an iron bell to signal a general attack. He sees the girl gesture to call off the attack. She goes to Gunnar to say goodbye. As she embraces her lover, she doesn't notice him pulling the gun from her sheath. Gunnar turns to the iron bell and fires a shot at it. The signal has been given. At this point, hatches open in the ground, and the farmer fires the first shot at the flagship with a large caliber weapon. The ship explodes. Cora and Gunnar are thrown back. They rise to their feet and hurry to Cora's shuttle. Meanwhile, the farmers continue their attack. The invasion ships explode one by one. Soldiers fall dead. Noble miraculously survives. He boldly jumps into the rebels' underground corridors and begins to advance through the caves, brutally killing everyone he encounters. Meanwhile, Noble's men break into the barn with the women and children. They are protected by a girl from Cora's group, also known as Nemesis. She has iron hands and is a great wielder of plasma swords. The enemies immediately begin to take heavy casualties. Noble wants to leave the battlefield on one of the nearest ships. He walks up the gangway, but one of the rebels catches up with him from behind. The man pushes Noble to the floor and the ship takes off with the fighting men. However, the enemy is physically inordinately strong. He easily snatches the knife from the attacker's hands and plunges it into his chest. Then, just as easily, he throws the nearly dead body overboard. Gunnar and Cora reach the hidden shuttle and take off. Positioned at the tail of the departing squadron, she directs the shuttle towards the dreadnought. By releasing smoke from a smoke bomb, Cora and Gunnar reveal themselves to be the damaged ship. After reporting the damage to Dreadnought's controller, they ensure that the base take control of their shuttle and send them to its main hangar for repairs. And in the village, the squad is waiting for the troops sneaking up on them. The fight begins. The advantage is now on one side, then on the other. Noble is on his ship, waiting for a report on the squad that is supposed to capture women and children. He doesn't know yet that the squad is facing an iron-handed defender. The girl kills one enemy after another, but there are many more of them. Unfortunately, the squad leader cuts off one of her arms and impales her with a sword. Seeing this, one of the boys runs screaming at the killer and stabs him in the leg. While the squad leader, screaming in pain, is distracted by the boy, the wounded girl pulls a knife from his leg and calms down the squad leader. Then, smiling at her little protector, she dies. Nevertheless, the first wave is repelled by the farmers, but there is no time to rejoice in their small victory, because the second wave of enemies is coming, and now they are armed with a walking tank with large caliber cannons. Meanwhile, medics enter Cora's shuttle. They drag out two unconscious bodies in their uniforms and place them on stretchers. No longer feigning injury, Cora and Gunnar get rid of the enemies. Cora then goes to mine the entire ship and asks Gunnar to return to their shuttle and start the engines. There is very little time before the explosion. She finds the heart of the ship and sets the charges. One of the soldiers notices her, and Cora has no choice but to shoot him, thus revealing her presence. While she is dealing with the soldiers, the command bridge is informed that a woman has infiltrated the ship. Noble immediately recognizes her as Cora. He orders her detained and the village destroyed. Since the rebel is on the ship with them, the grain is no longer needed, so the village can be shot, even though their soldiers are there now. No big deal, less hungry mouths to feed. At this point, a walking tank is causing a lot of trouble for the rebels. A warrior from Cora's squad sneaks as close as possible to the tank and fires a cannon at it, blowing the vehicle to pieces. Another warrior from the squad reaches out to her for help. The two of them face the third enemy wave and realize that they are unlikely to survive. But then the robot James comes between them and the enemy. A robot without a purpose. He watched the farmers for a very long time and finally chose a side. He starts systematically destroying the enemy infantry, blows up another tank, and only calms down when there is nothing left of the third wave. But the danger is not over yet. High in the sky, the dreadnought turns its main cannon on the village. Meanwhile, aboard the dreadnought, Gunnar starts the shuttle's engines and waits for Cora, who is struggling to get through to him. At the elevator exit, she is met by Noble and his henchmen. Dreadnought's cannon is aimed at the village, but a moment before the shot is fired, the charges Cora set explode. The ship shudders and begins to collapse. Gunnar sees Noble and Cora from a distance. He takes out the henchman, but misses Noble. But he shoots back with a clean shot. The wounded Gunnar falls to the ground and Cora attacks with her plasma sword, the same sword Noble holds in his hands. The battle of two irreconcilable enemies begins. Even a falling ship cannot force them to stop. Possessing incredible strength, Noble begins to gain the upper hand. Wrapping his arms around the girl's neck, he begins to strangle her. And when there is almost no strength strength left to resist, an unexpected aid comes. The wounded gunner was able to come up behind him and impale Noble with his sword. Released from her tight grip, Cora grabs her sword and swings it at her enemy's neck. This time Noble is truly dead, but it's not over yet as Dreadnought continues to fall to the ground. The only salvation is a half-damaged shuttle. Cora helps Gunner get inside and jumps in as well. She starts the only working engine, takes the shuttle outside, and tries to get as far away from the crash site as possible. That's when the last engine fails after the shuttle starts to fall. Luckily, the ground wasn't that far away, so the crash is quite bearable. Cora pulls the man out, but he is already in a very bad condition. Meanwhile, the Black Mountain Squadron comes to the aid. The rebels' fast fighters begin destroying the surviving enemy shuttles, giving them no chance to escape. Even the ground infantry with their tanks cannot escape. The farmers are jubilant. This is a victory. Cora asks Gunner to take a look at their achievement, because it's finally over. But when the girl looks at the man's face, she realizes that he has been dead for some time. Cora is heartbroken. Victory came at a high price, and at night it is time for the funeral. We see many funeral pyres, and when the last farewell words are spoken, promising to keep alive the memory of heroes' honor and bravery, Cora asks that neither honor nor bravery be mentioned when her name is pronounced. The girl admits to everyone that she has lied to them, that she is not really Cora, but Artalaya, the adopted daughter of the regent and the murderer of Princess Isa. General Titus replies that he knows all this. He also knows that Cora did not kill the princess. She is alive, which means Cora has a purpose, to find her and fight. With these words, the entire squad swears allegiance to Cora and is ready to go on with her. Even the robot James is ready to join them, because if the princess is alive, he has no choice. He's loyal to the king's family, so he'll be honored to fight for them, which means he has to find the princess and fight.